Will Alec Baldwin be convicted of involuntary manslaughter on the set of the movie Rust?
Now that Hannah Gutierrez has been found guilty, we're going to look forward to see what happens in Alec's case. Some people may be surprised, some not so much, but Hannah Gutierrez has been found guilty. I'm Lainey Long.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers.
And you may have been following this case for a while now. I know Andrew's had his eyes glued to the TV, but give us a little bit of insight today on what happened and how this is going to affect Alec.
Oh boy, that's the question. Yeah, I did watch as much as I could of the trial of armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed. It was carried live, and that which I couldn't follow because I am still trying to maintain my law practice. I watched in the evenings because that was all over the place on YouTube. And the trial went on and on and on, and the witnesses, said what they said, and we're going to get into that. But I was just shocked as anyone else. There is Hannah Gutierrez being whisked away by the sheriff's deputies. She was found guilty of the count of involuntary manslaughter. And it was a little bit of a cliffhanger. I think as many people thought she would be acquitted as thought she would be found guilty. She was found guilty. The second charge was kind of a throwaway charge. I think the jurors, at least by the one juror who was interviewed after the trial, said they didn't really need that. That was for tampering with evidence, an alleged bag of cocaine that Hannah Gutierrez is said to have given to a woman who visited her in a hotel room. It was inside two baggies, a green one and a white one, and the woman said it was just a white powder. Well, in the law, you're really not allowed to assume what most people assumed was in that baggie. But in any event, let's get back to the cast of characters. Aren't you curious about the characters that were involved in this trial?
Oh my gosh, I mean, a lot of different people seem to have been involved in this case.
So who we're looking at right now, this is the David Halls. He is the assistant director. They call him the first assistant director. He was also the safety manager on the set of Rust. He says that the gun chamber was empty when he handed the gun to Alec Baldwin, and he handed it and he said, "cold gun." So Alec Baldwin's defenders say in Hollywood, they say, allegedly, you're allowed to assume that it's a cold gun and point it and do whatever you do with it. However, David Halls recognized his culpability criminally for the activity that he engaged in, and he actually pled guilty. His name was on the original indictment along with Alec Baldwin, Hannah Gutierrez, and David Halls, but he reached a plea agreement and he received 6 months of unsupervised probation. So there he is on the stand. I don't know why he struck that pose, and I don't think it helped Hannah Gutierrez, but he is one of the characters in the case. Another character in the case is Sarah Zachary. Sarah was the prop master. She is in charge of all props, and effectively Sarah was the boss of Sarah Gutierrez, although Hannah Gutierrez, although Hannah had the primary responsibility for the guns that were on the set. She's actually an employee of a company called PDK Props. PDK Props is actually owned by a gentleman by the name of Seth Kenny. And there's Seth. Seth went on the stand and he explained that he provided a single box of blanks to the set. They're called dummy rounds. Seth Kenny owns the company that provided one box of dummy rounds and employed Sarah Zachary. So Sarah, oddly enough, got immunity in the whole thing. She was granted immunity, and she went on and testified. Seth Kenny actually is an old friend of Hannah Gutierrez's father, and his name is Thel Reed. I mean, Hollywood is such a, I don't want to call it an incestuous business, but you got to know somebody out there.
Yeah, all of these people, it's interesting seeing how they were kind of intertwined before this set. I mean, this set wasn't going to be this, big box office movie. We were looking at a smaller film, and it seems that a lot of the people that were working on it were already people with ties to Hollywood, despite it not being a big budget film.
Yeah, and I mean, these people are all friends. These people are all interrelated in terms of you scratch my back, you scratch your back. That was one of the problems here, is that Hannah Gutierrez had only ever worked on one movie before, and her claim to fame was that her father was this famous armorer Thel Reed, and so obviously uh, his name was associated with her. And I mean, these are jobs you're not going to find on Monster Board, or in the old days when I was looking for a job in the old days, the newspapers had a classified section in the back, especially the Sunday newspaper had a huge job listing posting. And in the old days, if you wanted a job, that's where you went, to the Sunday paper. Now you go to, I don't even know where you go, Monster Board. Where are the other job
Oh
listings?
gosh, Indeed, in LinkedIn.
Okay.
I don't even know. One of the things that struck me a little bit crazy about this case is with Hannah, it kind of almost seemed like this was another thing coming, because you mentioned before she worked on the set of one film before
Yeah.
this, and even while she was working on that set, it seemed like she was having issues where Nicholas Cage was yelling at her because of loud firing sounds and things going off. So as horrible as this case is, when you take that into consideration that she was already having problems, it definitely seems like she was not prepared and did not have what it the level of responsibility that would be required in a role like this.
Yeah, the name of that movie, Hannah Gutierrez's first movie as Armorer, was The Old Way. And as you said, it was a Nick Cage movie. And there were a number of complaints, we're told, basically from reading and hearing. And, we weren't there, we don't know. So you can comment however you want down in the comment section. But it was a well known secret in Hollywood that there had been problems on that set. And even Nick Cage, after complaining, lost his temper at her. And I guess Hollywood's the kind of a place, even though you have a bad job performance, you get another job. So she got this other job on the movie set of Rust with Alec Baldwin. And what happened, and all fingers pointed to her. One of the problems I had in the movie, one of the problems I had with the trial, and like I said, I watched a lot of it live, and then I went back and watched a lot of the footage at night. I watched the opening arguments and the closing arguments, and I was a little bit troubled that A, she was convicted, and B, they whisked her off right away. I mean, I don't see any direct evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard, even though it's only involuntary manslaughter, that she put the bullet in the gun. Now, I know that's not the only fact that can lead to a conviction on this charge, but I don't see any evidence as to how the bullet got on the stand. Was it Sarah Zachary? Was it David Halls? David Halls thought the gun was cold. I thought there was a lot of liability to go around, and I did not see any evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard, that Hannah put the bullet in the gun.
And you would think also that when you're dealing with something like a gun, that people are going to be checking every time that it's passed. Now, I'm not familiar with guns, so I'm not really sure how to tell a dummy round from a live round. Maybe there's like a weight difference or something going on there. But when you have something that's this dangerous and it's going from one hand to another, that is a lot of responsibility to put. And it makes sense that Hannah would be taking guilt for this, because it's her job at the end of the day to be responsible for the gun, to make sure that the ammo is being allocated appropriately. Why is there even real ammo on a set to the movie in the first place? Like we talked about in our last episode, there are a million different tricks that Hollywood could do. We don't need an actual bullet on set. It's just a lot of failures in a lot of different places, it feels.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions as to why Live Bullet was on the set. I mean, there were two explanations that I heard. One was that people like Alec and others during the breaks and other times would go out target shooting. They would set up tin cans, and this is how they pass time, shooting tin cans. Now, it's not funny, and I shouldn't laugh, but I remember when I was a kid growing up in Pennsylvania, state game lands, hunting was a big thing. I remember people would do that. They would set up tin cans. They would rummage through the trash and they would find the pea cans and the coffee cans. And they preferred the coffee cans because they're bigger, right? So they would set them all up and they'd walk away and they'd shoot at them. Now, that's something for kids to do. I mean, adults on a movie set. So that was one of the stories I heard, was that, they actually were having target practice during the breaks and after the day was over. But the other explanation was that at times, what they would do when you're shooting a movie, especially if you're shooting a movie with one camera, here shooting you. Oops, I missed, and it went through that door over there. So now you do what's called a cutaway, and you actually do shoot the door, and you take a cutaway. You edit those two shots together, me going like that, and then the cutaway of the bullet in the door, and voila, a good editor makes it look like it's a sequence. Now, I don't know if that was really necessary. I don't know if they can't do the cutaway in the studio. I don't think that's any excuse for live rounds being on the set where there were people, and I think just the crime itself speaks for itself. That the cinematographer and the director, the cinematographer lost her life and the director was shot in the shoulder. He did survive, but I mean, I just can't understand it. Now, the other thing, in our previous episode on this topic, we talked about the 4 gun rules. Only 2 are really relevant here. One is that you never point a gun at anything you don't want to shoot, like I'm pointing at you now. The second rule is always treat every gun as if it's loaded, because you don't know what's going to happen. Now, some people say, oh, those are just general rules. They don't pertain. Guess what? They do pertain, because those same rules are in the Screen Actors Guild, this SAG. They have the same rules with regard to filming, doing TV, whatever you're doing in Hollywood to entertain us. So, yeah, those are rules. And yeah, I think I started this dissertation when you asked me, well, last week, didn't you say a lot can be done with cinematography? Well, yeah, you're there and I can point the gun over there and the cinematographer's over there. It's all done with lights and mirrors and camera angles and editing. And there really, there was no real reason for him to be pointing the gun directly at the cinematographer.
I definitely agree with that. It's like I mentioned before, a lot of things had to go wrong, and unfortunately, this is going to be a precautionary tale for Hollywood, and hopefully, we never see anything like this happening again. But it is good knowing that at least there's a standard. I mean, we're going to wait to see how long she's, in prison for. She could be sentenced for up to 18 months for this. We're not quite sure how long she's going to be there, but I think this is an important thing that people need to take seriously when you're in this position of power, when you have access to weapons like these, to be responsible with how you're using the weapons and how you're managing your job. A lot of people said that they're used to more professional people dealing with the armorers and stuff like that, and that it just seemed a little chaotic. It's no reason that this had happened.
Yeah, now what we're looking at is we showed the actual scene that he was shooting, the video of him actually doing the pulling the gun out of his side. That was one of the last pieces of video that cinematographer Halyna Hutchins ever shot or ever filmed. Bad choice of words, I apologize. These are photographs that were taken by the sheriff's department as they walked around the movie set after the shooting, taking a look. And we will see more. But the real question now, and we started out with this question, and the question now is, what will be the impact of Hannah Gutierrez being found guilty? There she is right after the shooting. We see her, she had a little bit of a breakdown, as we can all understand. The question, her conviction on the charge of involuntary manslaughter, what impact will it have on Alec Baldwin? His trial is, as we sit here now, scheduled for July of this year, 2024. And some people say, okay, they already got her. How can you hold him liable? Well, there's a chain of irresponsibility. Now we're looking at a picture of Halyna Hutchins. She was the cinematographer who lost her life, and there she is with her husband and her child. So it takes more than one person's negligence to cause, an injury and a death like this. So the fact that she was found liable really doesn't mean yes, he is more likely to be found liable, or yes, he's more likely to be found less liable. Alec Baldwin could, and we don't know, he could face liability kind of down two channels. One, his own negligence for, as I said before, violating the Screen Actors Guild code that, you don't actually point a weapon at a person, and you treat a gun as though it's loaded at all times, and that you observe all safety standards while you're acting in a movie. So that's avenue one, him directly in his own liability, but secondly, as the executive producer of the movie. And a lot of people have kind of craned their heads at this, that this was a low budget film. Sure, millions and millions of dollars were being spent, but it really was a low budget production. It was not a main Hollywood production. They were doing it out in New Mexico. And he was not only the star, he was the executive producer among, I think, 6 or 7 different producers whose duties ranged anywhere from just keeping the books to overlooking hiring to scheduling. But it was his baby. He was the executive producer, and he was the one that had the overall responsibility. So if the first avenue of his liability is his own conduct, holding the gun in his hand, the second avenue of liability for him is as the executive producer and having the overall responsibility for safety on this set.
Yeah, I think a little bit like how you mentioned, he has it on both fronts there. I think that it would be a little bit different if he wasn't, like, say he was just an actor, because you could like, I don't really know, I'm not experienced in Hollywood. I don't know what kind of training and preparation the actors themselves have to have when dealing with guns, if they're trained to make sure that the gun is empty. But the fact that he's one of the producers and one of the head people in this, I think that adds a lot of liability from my perspective as a non-legal professional. I think that the fact that he had such a major part in this film is very incriminating to him. How Hannah's, being found guilty is going to impact him, that I'm not too certain of. But I think a lot of people are also surprised to see that he's even being questioned again after things had originally been dropped. So it's going to be interesting seeing where this goes.
Well, you have to stop saying you're not a legal professional, but because you know what? The jurors are the ones that decide these cases.
Yeah.
Jurors, who are a wide range of backgrounds. I've tried jury trials, and the cards that come in with the juror information are all kinds of walks of life. You name it. One of the jurors, we should have pulled the clip, but one of the jurors was interviewed walking away from the courthouse. And he was dressed in some kind of I want to say denim, but a work outfit is the best way I can describe it. People come from all kinds of different backgrounds to try these cases. They can be engineers, they can be maintenance people, they can be school teachers, they can be hairstylists, they can just be anything. So your view is extremely valuable. Attorneys pay good money to have mock jurors, and they do mock jury trials. In fact, I don't know how it got onto my Facebook, but they're actually looking for mock jurors right now. On my Facebook, and I was thinking if I had the time, I would sign up, because I've done it in the past when I was in law school to earn a couple of bucks. I would run over to one of the other law schools on the other side of the river in Boston, and they would have mock trials, and they would have just common people like me at that time come in and sit for a jury. And I know some of the big firms pay good money for mock jurors to come in, and they'll try certain portions of their case and ask the jurors how they would vote and what their impressions are. This way, they hone down their jury presentations. The large firms do this, especially in big money cases like this one. So I wanted to make another point. I didn't write it down, but I think that a lot is going to happen between now and July. I would doubt that Alec Baldwin would take a plea. I would strongly believe that he will maintain his innocence all the way through. One thing we failed to mention at the beginning here was that we showed the picture of Hannah being led out of the courtroom by the bailiffs, which surprised me. I was surprised both by the fact that she was convicted, because it's just me listening to the testimony that I heard. And yes, I heard people say that the set was chaos. I heard Ross Adiego, who has decades of experience working on sets, say that she was not as thorough, or I think he described other armorers as being like military or retired police officers or law enforcement. And I took his commentary very seriously. But in the end, I didn't see beyond a reasonable doubt the direct tie between her and the bullet getting into the gun. But obviously the jury disagreed with me. I was even more surprised when they carted her off immediately. The prosecutor immediately say, "I move to remand her." And I didn't think her attorney gave the strongest arguments. I mean, he said that, well, she's been good this whole time. She's been under the court's watch. There was a warrant. She did appear voluntarily for all the sessions. But I would have gone a lot further. I mean, I would have argued that she's a member of the community. She has family ties, community ties. She maintains this activity and that activity. And, she's not a risk of flight because she is not, one of these Hollywood people that's always going to Europe. I would have made a lot more arguments. So I was surprised at and he also had to look up the rule. He said, Your Honor, now hold on. I under rule, and he went on to his phone, under rule, whatever it was. So I was surprised that a little bit more of an effort wasn't made to argue to keep her out of jail until she's sentenced, because she hasn't been sentenced. But so that surprised me. There are two schools of thought about what's going to go forward, which was the whole purpose of this episode. One school of thought is, well, the jurors in Alec Baldwin's case will say, well, she was convicted. Someone has been held accountable for the death of the cinematographer. So we'll let him off. That's one school of thought. But the other school of thought is, wow, look what he let happen on that set. Look at that. We got to hold him responsible. So who knows what the jury will do this summer? There's just, and I'm not a person that likes to, even tell my clients going into a trial, what are my odds? What are my odds? And I always say, as an attorney, I always get as prepared as I possibly can. I've never thought I was overly prepared. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen this summer. I think that it was instructive. The other point I wanted to make, and this is really damning, and it's just not me saying that. You know how Alan Baldwin said he didn't pull the trigger?
That's my head was going right to that the whole time. I was thinking, it's just what's going to happen because he said he didn't pull the trigger.
Well, there were three different experts by my count, and again, I didn't watch it all. I watched as much as I could, but three different experts, FBI and elsewhere, talked about the forensic analysis that they did on that gun. And all three of them agreed that gun would not fire without pulling the trigger. So that's going to be an issue for Mr. Baldwin come the trial in July of 2024. I had a little bit of a head-scratching moment when the FBI expert went on the stand, and to try and make the gun discharge, they laid it down on a table and they banged it with a hammer until they broke it. Now, I don't know. I'm not a forensics expert. I'm no expert in this stuff. I'm not a firearms expert. But I don't know if it was really necessary to bang the thing with a hammer multiple times. But nonetheless, the fact remains that three different experts, by my count, went on the stand, and all three of them said, you know what? No, the gun would not go off, or discharge is the proper terminology here, without pulling the trigger. So I don't know. Do you have any closing thoughts on that, or should we move on to our comments from our many viewers?
No, I mean, we can move on to comments. I don't have much to say. I do think it's interesting, and I'm interested in seeing how the jury's going to be impacted. Wondering, if how the jury's going to feel about whether or not he can do it. Like you said, they have the experts, so it's looking a little questionable. But do you want to go first with the comments?
Yeah, sure. I have a bunch of them here. I feel like this is, I can't pronounce this, Oomaseoo, Maisie, I'll say. I feel like the state is doing a good job of providing reasonable doubt. It seems like there were a lot of disgruntled people on the set with motive, and anyone could have tampered with the bullets and sabotaged Hannah or the production. If I were on the jury, I would need convincing. And from comments that I've heard elsewhere, I think that was a common thought. I think it was pretty common that people said, anyone could have put that bullet in the gun. And that's why I had commented earlier that it's only me, and I know it takes 12, but it's only me. But I had a problem going to all reasonable doubt as to Hannah's getting the bullet in there. We don't know who put the bullet. During that whole trial, there's no direct testimony as to who put the bullet in the gun. So I don't know. Did you find any comments?
Yeah, so this is in regards to the same Alec Baldwin situation. Tina B, who actually has commented on many of our videos, so hi Tina. This was his fault. He treated that gun like it was a toy and she paid for it with her life. I'm totally pro-gun, by the way, but only for people that have brain cells in their head and understand that they're not toys. And I think that a lot of people feel similarly, where maybe they might not be against guns, but like you mentioned, the rules that to not be pointing a gun at someone unless you intend to shoot. I think I agree that there's a lot of faults that went through in this situation.
Yeah, I think a lot of pro-gun people, a lot of people very strongly believe in this Second Amendment right, and I think they're the ones that feel even more strongly than others that gun safety is a big, 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 big thing. I mean, if you're going to have guns around for hunting or sport or whatever, safety is a big, 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 huge issue. Here is a comment that I found interesting. This is from Richard. A man with a lot of powerful friends, but no coincidence whatsoever. Money talks in the USA. And we know what walks, but anyhow, I thought that was a good comment.
Mm-hmm. So I have Jonathan Mitchell 9886 who says he doesn't feel the need to apologize. He's pretty sure that the armor and the first assistant director are going to carry his water for him, and I believe that's in regard to Alec as well. And the fact, I'm not too familiar with all the statements that he's put out, but his insistence that he didn't shoot the gun and being completely closed off to that, I can understand, being in denial and having issue with that. But it's interesting seeing that he's completely separating himself from any guilt in that matter of having pulled the trigger.
Here's one from Wyatt R.Y.E. Sway. Wyatt Rye Sway. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but you have 33 subscribers. Congratulations. That's great, because we here at this podcast know how difficult it is to get subscribers. Okay. And he's commenting on something that I said during this episode. I thought they said people were not target shooting during breaks. They have video of Baldwin plinking cans or other targets. I think that's a good point. I think that came out in some other coverage that I saw, but I don't recall seeing that during what I watched of the trial. So you may well be right. If there was video, I know there's a video out there somewhere of them saying cut. In other words, the cinematographer had everything she needed. That rush was over, and he's still shooting. He takes a couple of more shots, and so I know that's out there. But I think that didn't make it into the trial. We weren't privy to all the motions in limine. That's a motion to exclude evidence, and all the objections. Interestingly, in Hannah Gutierrez Reed's trial, were made up at the bench. There was an episode, there was an issue, and after that, the judge made the attorneys come up to the bench, and the microphones were turned off. So I don't know where to go with that. It's just something that was out there, didn't come into Hannah's trial, as far as I know, as probably not relevant. May well come into the trial at Mr. Baldwin's trial in July, but that remains to be seen. Any closing thoughts there, Lainey?
No, I mean, thank you guys as always. Thank you for leaving your insight. It is interesting seeing how you guys are feeling about this case, and definitely know if you want to see more videos on this. It's, a really sad story, and it's kind of hard to deep dive into it. A lot of the things we talk about on this podcast can be kind of hard topics, but it is interesting and nice seeing that at least people are being held accountable, and that this isn't something that's getting swept under the rug like a lot of things in Hollywood do. Well, we'll see what happens with it, but it looks like people are being held accountable, and that seems good.
That's right. That's right. And so we want to ask you to please remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe if you haven't. Please click the little like, and be sure to share this with your friends. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and let us know down in the comments if there are other cases that you want us to take a look at. Have a good day. You have been watching About the Law, a production of the law offices of Andrew D. Myers in Methuen in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts, and in Derry, just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. Remember to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with your friends and others. If you'd like to talk to me about an injury case, a car accident, a slip and fall, a serious bodily injury case, or some other case, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you. You can contact us through my website at attorney-myers.com. We have a contact us block, or you can call on one of the telephone numbers we've given there, or you can email me at andrew@attorney-myers.com. The foregoing is offered for informational purposes only. It is not intended as and does not constitute legal advice. Laws vary widely from state to state. You should rely only on the advice given to you during a personal consultation by a local attorney thoroughly familiar with state laws and the area of practice in which your concern lies. This podcast must be and hereby is labeled advertisement in some jurisdictions. And that's that.
And that's that. No tunnels.
Horrible case. Horrible case. No, there are no tunnels in New Mexico.
No tunnels in New Mexico.
No
live rounds.
Might be some horses. I bet there's horses.
Living horses.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of horses in New Mexico, but no tunnels.